Show. Listen, we have a great show lined up for you. I'm your host, Kim Jacobs, better known as the Balance Doctor. And all of our guests that come on, they're either people that have overcome some tremendous odds in their own lives as they balance this thing called life, or they're experts and they're here to share tips and strategies that will help you better balance and manage your life. Grab your virtual seats and let's get ready for some real, relevant, and relatable content on today's episode of The Kim Jacobs Show. Hello, everyone. Okay, today is a very serious topic that we're going to be talking about on this Freestyle Friday. We're talking about suicide prevention and how we can have a discussion surrounding this. And today we have with us two of our Freestyle Friday experts. So before we go into who they are, I want you all to come into the studio and grab your virtual seats as quickly as you can. Go ahead and share the broadcast out with your friends and encourage them to be a part of today's discussion on suicide prevention here on the Kim Jacobs Show. Listen, Marsha, just tell everybody hello and just something about yourself, even though we're going to go in more detail later, but just say something right quick.
My name is Marsha Watson. I am a virtual executive assistant, business coach, and a time management and goal setting expert. I'm here to make your life easy.
Yes. Okay. And you, Natasha, as well, all the way in Canada. Talk to us for a moment and just let people know something about you.
Hello, all. I'm Natasha Halliday. Sorry, I have a tickle in my throat. I'm a social worker, so I'm a therapist. I do public speaking, and for a little bit of fun, I'm a comedian.
Oh yeah, that's right. That she does have the comedic flair. I always forget about that, but it resonates through your spirit. So listen, also in the virtual studio audience, when you come in, let us know who you are and where you're visiting in from as well. And we'll be sure to acknowledge you. So on today, we are talking with these two individuals, Marsha V. Watson, and she is, as she's already said, a business coach. She's also a time management specialist, as well as she helps with goal setting. And I think that's going to play a key part in our discussion today, because sometimes when people are trying to manage and balance this thing called life, it seems to be very overwhelming. Mm-hmm. And so I'm honored to have you here today, Marsha, to talk from that perspective. If we can get some things just honed in and more under control within our realm of responsibility, it can really make you at least feel like, okay, whoo, I got this, whoosha. I might be able to manage a little bit better. And Natasha, I'm happy that you're here because you are a mental health expert and you focus on just literally making everyone's life experience better. That's the bottom line. So today, that's going to be able to come through her pores and come over to each and every one of you that's viewing. But we all know someone that needs this broadcast today, whether it's you personally, or whether it's a friend, a family member, someone you don't even know that you just may encounter. They're walking on a bridge or walking in a grocery store or sitting in a bathroom. And you can tell that there's something different about what they're experiencing in that moment. So somebody needs this information that's being shared today. We're going to take a commercial break, come right back and deep dive into today's discussion. We'll be right back right after this break.
My father had 4 of his fingers amputated in a workplace accident. It was the first injured individual I represented, and I knew I had to win that case. When someone walks into my office and they've been injured, I know what they're going through. If you've been injured at work with Hunter and Everett. We've got the experience, so let us help you.
Okay, we're back, everyone. And just starting off with, even just in the United States, suicide is the 3rd leading cause of death among young people between the ages of 15 and 24. 5,000 young people commit suicide literally in the United States each year, according to the I have a specific, all of the sites, the sccenter.org, and I'll be putting the links in here of where we're getting this Suicide and Crisis Center of North Texas is where I got that particular information. So we're going to be putting the links so you can go back and later reference them. Let's get started if we can. Maybe let's start from a time management perspective. If we can go from that, Marsha, let's go there first. Yeah, let's just talk about some of the things you planned on talking about today.
So when it comes to, I find that when it comes to time management, when you're starting to feel overwhelmed, that's when procrastination comes in. So you kind of set everything aside and, you know, you get overwhelmed with all the things that you have to do. So sometimes it's just a matter of doing what you can do and doing it bit by bit until you tackle everything. I know that when it comes, and it can cause issues like anxiety. That's what I'm looking at. It can cause anxiety. And then it can cause it can cause where you're not functioning properly in your life. And so when you're putting things in its place in time, so let's say you function better between 9 and noon, then all the things that are important to do, that's when you should do them. And then when you have less energy during the day, the things that you put off from yesterday, you can do those things in the afternoon. But it's just a matter of doing one little thing at a time. And what's very important as well is your tribe. So I know that tribe and time, people don't seem to think that they go well together, but your tribe is very important. They can keep you accountable with what you have on your time for the day, what is important, like putting something that's not necessarily important on what one would deem not important on your time to get things done. They can help you with that. So I'm kind of rambling, but
no, this is good rambling. Keep rambling. We need this.
But it's very important to have a tribe that can help you with your time management, accountability partner, so that you can release some of the anxiety that is caused when you're not managing your time well.
I'm actually serving as your assistant over here. I'm typing I'm typing what you're saying. So hopefully it's helpful.
Thank you.
This is good. So do what you can do and put things in the proper place. And even if it's just one little thing that you do each time. Okay.
Exactly. And take breaks. It's okay to take breaks, but the breaks shouldn't last too long.
That's good. Take a break. I take a nap if I need to. I'll take I don't care if I just jump in the bed with my 10 minutes. I'm taking a nap. Okay, go ahead. This is good.
Yes. And one other thing that I learned too is, maybe I'm going ahead of myself, but one other thing that I learned when it comes to time management, when you go through so much in life and you release some of the stress, then you realize that you didn't even realize that, you were holding all of this in your body. So when you release all of it, then you become tired because your body's like, now I don't have to go into survivor mode. And this is why I think it's very important that, you also have a therapist, and I'm sure Natasha will get into that. But then, it's okay to take the time that you need to heal, and your accountability partners, and if you're in a business, you can have somebody that can delegate work to, because your mind, body, and soul is important to function in life, and you are needed. And so to take care of yourself, you need to also manage your time effectively.
That's good. Very good. Okay, so you've already shared some things that if we can just gain control of those, it would automatically kind of trigger us to be almost like we can take on more. We're able to take on a little bit more because we're able to manage what we have. Right. Is what I'm thinking. So what advice do you give people to be able to figure out how to start implementing these things? Because right now, when we hear them be said by an expert like yourself, it's like, how do I infuse that in my own individual walk if I don't know where to really begin and I'm already overwhelmed?
Right. So this is where having a accountability partner or a mastermind group, your tribe, again, is very important. They can help you. Like, write it all down. Like, write every single thing down that you want done. And, having a therapist too, they can help you how to get unstuck and how to be able to move forward. So you write everything down. Say, this is what I want to get done. This is what I can delegate. And I know that my best friend is, let's say my best friend is good at this. I can tell her, this is where I need help. So it starts with write everything down. Know who your tribe is, where they can help you with. And I will say again, it's very important to have a therapist, and you can have a coach as well.
Okay. Listen, this is great advice. And so in the studio audience, make sure you all, if you have questions, while we have Marsha V. Watson here, go ahead and write your questions down. We'll pop them up and get her to answer some of them. We're talking about suicide prevention today, and Marsha is here to help us with this. And I want to make sure they know how they can stay connected with you. And I know you'll be chiming in throughout the broadcast, but how can they stay connected with you, Marsha?
So on my Instagram is Marsha V. Watson, or on my webpage is divineexecutive.ca.
All right. So this is already some great information. We want to provide hope and inspiration today on this episode of the Kim Jacobs Show. Suicide prevention is real. We when we look at the statistics, according to last year U.S. News, 49,500 people lost their lives to suicide just in 2022. And in 2021, 48,183 died by suicide in the United States alone. So this isn't even broken down per country, because every country has a significant amount of death just due to suicide. So how do we make sure that one death in every 11 minutes, according to the Center of Disease Control is happening? In those 11 minutes, we need to be able to have a conversation as to how this can come to a halt. How can it end? Any thoughts that you all may have as the panelists? And I know we're going to go into your points, Natasha, but just conversation about this.
I think it's very important to pay attention to the people around you too. If you notice that somebody's really quiet, someone who is either giving away everything, all of a sudden they're just like, oh, you can have this, you can have that. Pay attention to that. And the person who is the strong person, pay attention to them too, because they're probably hurting in ways. So it's very, very important to have discernment, to know when you feel like someone might be hurting. Check on your strong friends, check on your loud friends, check on your friends who are introverts and, ambiverts. Check in with them every so often so that, you can hear their heart and see if there's anything that you need to say, let me tap into that and I'm here for you.
I'm glad you're saying that, because when we look at people just from the exterior, we automatically assume, oh, they have this, or they have it together, or they're good. Look at them. And they don't even help other people, type of thing. So we actually sometimes judge the people that we think have it all together, when in fact, we don't know what they're doing to mask their situation. And they may not even be masking their situation. They're just trying to survive to the best of their ability too, with the circumstances that they're dealing with, but they may not be sharing it publicly with everyone else.
Exactly.
Any thoughts that you want to chime in on too, Natasha? Feel free.
Well, I just wanted to touch on your language, because that's something that I wanted to bring up in this discussion. I'm really grateful, and I smiled for a second. I'm like, people might get the wrong impression about me smiling, but you said die by suicide. And it's very important that people recognize the term commit suicide is not necessarily considered an appropriate way to talk about it now. So now the language is someone dies by suicide, because you commit crimes. Somebody's suffering and in pain who tries to end their life, they're not committing a crime. So just wanted to touch on I'm really glad you use the language, and that we need to be aware of how the language is moving forward as we start to understand more about suicide and suicidality.
That's so good. And I literally was just reading something that was in a statistic. So that's the languaging that's out there, that's in all of the statistics. And I'm grateful that is clear to everyone. Talk about this 988 number some too, if you will, Natasha.
Yeah, so 988, which I think has been in the US for about a year and a half. We just launched it November 30th in Canada. So it's brand spanking new in Canada. We've been hearing about it, but we just got it. So the same way that 911 exists and different series of 3-digit numbers to create quick access to things, 988 was launched in order to provide mental health support and suicide prevention and suicide support so someone can text 988 or someone can call 988. In Canada, the US, I believe it exists in some other countries as well. And what's great is the language. So in Canada, it's English and French. I'm assuming in the US, it's English and Spanish, so that there is that ability to reach, the most commonly spoken languages in the region. But there's trained counselors providing support 24 hours. So you're getting immediate access to a trained counselor to get support if somebody's having thoughts about suicide, if they are, expressing something, if they've maybe tried something. And, of course, there's different levels of intervention depending on what's happening, but that is something that somebody can now call, pick up their phone, dial 988 or text 988 to get some support.
And I think that it keeps it simple. You can remember that 988, 988, 988. You know how when I listen to radio commercials and people will say over and over again the same number, and it's like, oh, such and such, such and such, da, 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 da. And I'm like, okay, this is embedded in my mind, even if I don't want it to be, just from a radio commercial. So 988, 988, if you're in the United States or Canada. Now, if you're in a different country, which this show streams in over 100 countries and also in 350 million households, then in your area, you need to identify what is your suicide prevention hotline, because one time we did a whole list of the different ones, and it's like overloading in the system here. But you in your local area, you have your designated area. Get that number, put it in your pocket, put it in your phone. And if you are dealing with a crisis, go ahead and call somebody, because your life is valuable on this earth. And we're all put here to be able to salt the earth and to be able to make a difference for somebody else's life. So you're needed. You are valued and you're needed. If you've never heard that from anybody else, you're hearing it today on the Kim Jacobs Show, that we need you and your gifts and your talents to be able to be on this earth.
Everybody's here for a reason.
Say what you said.
I said everybody's here for a reason.
That's right.
And I see Mackenzie has put up that it is in Spanish in the US.
Yes. Thank you, Mackenzie. Okay, let's see. National. Okay. So in the studio audience, are any comments? If any comments are coming in, let's make sure I don't miss any of those. I want to take greetings, everyone. And anybody can read the comments. You don't have to wait for me to put my glasses on. Somebody read it right quick.
It's still the same one.
Greetings, everyone. Yeah.
McKim's Bling Bar says that. Okay, glad to have you on, McKean's. Let's see. All right. So what we're going to do is keep talking, and let's go with you, Natasha, some of the points that you would like to share with everyone today. We'll have lots of discussion, but I'd like to hear some of these points.
So one of the things that I thought maybe might be helpful to look at is, you've given some statistics already. It is alarming how high the rate of suicide is. And when I was doing some research, per 100,000, the numbers that I found were in Canada 12.9, in Australia 12.7. This is per 100,000. In Norway 12.3, and in the US 11.5. So that's a lot of people.
Yes.
And I think it's something that many don't understand if they've never experienced it. And I think it's really important to have these dialogues, because we become fearful of stuff we don't know and then don't know how to handle it. So one of the things I wanted to look at was some of the myths tied to the idea of suicide and having suicidal thoughts. A lot of people believe that if you talk to somebody about suicide, you're implanting the idea. Right? So if you say to somebody, are you thinking about suicide? That's what makes them want to end their life. Absolutely not. That is not it. Really what happens is if you open that conversation, you might be opening the option for them to be honest, to say, yes, I am having those thoughts. Because it's not an easy conversation to have. Right? So please debunk the thought that talking about suicide is what makes people want to harm themselves or try to end their life. That is not the case.
Wait a minute, I'm going to retape that one part because I did a typo when I do not want to put a typo under your name. Hold on. Let me correct that. Okay. So are you thinking about suicide provokes them to want to do it? That's a myth.
That's an absolute myth.
Okay.
One of the first things I learned in school.
Okay. Okay. Next point. That's important to know.
Mhm.
Because people I know not mental health experts maybe, but general people automatically think that. There's like, I can see something going on, but I'm not sure. Do I even mention the word suicide? Do I say the word? Are you, can you give, before you just go to another point, what's a way to approach that would debunk that myth so that you are saying it properly? Do you have any suggestion on that? Like, how do we say it right?
I always suggest when people want to embark on a difficult conversation, and start with your observation. And I think Marsha already addressed this. If somebody's quieter than usual, so the observation first. Hey, Marsha, I've noticed you're a bit quieter than usual. You don't seem to be your bubbly self. You know, is something going on? Maybe not even going directly to, are you thinking about suicide? Or if, like the example she gave of somebody giving away their stuff, I've noticed you're getting rid of all your belongings. Like, is there a reason? And maybe being honest, I'm concerned that you might be having thoughts about suicide. Can we talk about it? Being very intentional to ask questions that invite dialogue, that don't bring accusation, but invite a dialogue and let the person, because that already shows your care. I'm not, and really, I think one of the things that people struggle with is, how do I come to this when they're terrified?
Okay.
Right. But I think that's why it's important to debunk this myth that talking about it makes what somebody want to do something.
That's good.
Right.
Okay. I love that. So just your observation and how you are, I'm observing that you're doing a lot of cleaning house here. What is that about? Is it just a winter cleaning, or is it something else happening that's just a little bit deeper that you want to discuss? I love how you're suggesting some ideas for us. Good. All right.
Also keeping in mind too, like, depending on what you observed, where and how to seek intervention for that, right? But like I said, start with the dialogue, start with the observations, maybe being aware of, you know, if you think about accelerating a car, you don't start at 100.
Right.
Right. I don't know, for anybody who's test driven a Tesla, that thing can go so fast you can harm your neck. So you're not going to do that breakneck sort of ridiculous speed. You're not going to go, hi, are you thinking about suicide necessarily? It can be, you know, I've seen some changes. I've noticed a difference in your mood. I have some concerns, and starting there and progressively moving to, are you having thoughts about ending your life?
But ultimately you need to get there, though, is what I'm understanding.
Yes. If that's what you're concerned about, if you're just talking to somebody who seems depressed and you don't necessarily think they're thinking about ending their life, but you don't even know how to broach that conversation, you can just start with the observation of the changes and go there. But if it's maybe somebody who historically this has happened before, or that's the absolute concern, yeah, bring that up. But you don't have to start there. It doesn't have to be abrupt. You can lead your way and ease into it.
And what if somebody officially says, you know what? Yes, I'm actually, I am willing to die by suicide or end my life, or I don't feel like it matters one way or the other that I'm here on this earth. So, because I've had conversations with people and that has been the outcome of what they've stated.
Right.
So what do I do then in that case? Because I give them what I know to give them, but if you have any suggestions, please share it as well.
Well, and I think this is part of why people are terrified of it. If somebody says yes, they are, a lot of people go to, well, I'm not an expert.
Immediately,
but
unfortunately.
Do not devalue the benefit of your presence. Start with the fact that your presence has value. And then you can, again, embark in a dialogue of, can we contact somebody? Do you want to talk to somebody about this? Like, you can ask, like, there's things as a professional that I would do in an assessment. I'm going to ask you about a plan. I'm going to ask you all kinds of stuff. You can ask some of those questions, but I don't necessarily encourage every random person to do a full mental health status assessment. That's not what they know how to do. And it's not necessarily necessary. It's just, if there's been a determined risk, then what are some of the next steps for risks? And often what I look at is, if you know somebody's really struggling, that becomes part of the invited dialogue. Can we talk about maybe what some next steps are? Okay. Right? Can we get you some help? Have you considered talking to somebody? Or if they have a therapist, when was your last appointment? Are you seeing your therapist soon? Are you, I would get into, because I do this for a living and I'm so used to having this dialogue.
Right.
Do you have a plan? Do you have a date? Like, I ask really specific questions. Not everybody's necessarily going to do that. But looking at then seeking support, does it start with calling somewhere like 988? Do we need to maybe go get some help at our local emergency room? Or what are the different options that you might have? Right? One thing that I do, because I work in this field, is I look at safety planning. Right? So even potentially in advance of hearing it in the moment, I might have had a safety plan in place. And so then we go into what is in the safety plan, or you start safety planning. Okay, so if you're having these thoughts, a lot of people will honestly admit, I'm having thoughts. There's parts of me that want to do it, but I often ask a question about kind of not percentages, but if you think about it like percentages, because most people will say there's a part of them that does, but not the entire part of them wants to. So let's tap into that part that doesn't want to, and can we get support?
Okay.
Can we talk to somebody? A lot of people, it's not black and white where they absolutely do or they absolutely don't.
Okay. So there's a comment here. There needs to be like free counseling or therapists or discounts that are available. This is something that's a comment. Any thoughts on that?
So this is the one challenge of being Canadian, because I know some websites, like I think Better Me, I don't know if that exists in this, BetterHelp. Now I'm going to forget it. There's some online ones where you can do like kind of asynchronous support with a therapist.
Yeah, there is BetterHelp, and that's here in the United States as well.
Okay, so BetterHelp is in Canada. So I would start with, do a Google search, because a lot of people are like, I don't know the resources, but then they put a period at the end of it. Seek resources, because there might be some stuff in Canada tied to a lot of workplaces. They have what's called employee assistance programs, and so you have access to a therapist for a brief intervention based on your connection to a work. So also that might be an option. Somebody who has a job might be able to get support for them or a family member, right? Well, but it's looking into what are the different options within your area. Is it something that it's online? Is it something that you can do in person? We know, yes, private therapy is expensive. I know this because I'm a private therapist, right? So it's definitely not something that everybody can access. But like I did a talk in September at Fitchburg State University in Fitchburg, Massachusetts. And they said, at the end, we want you to provide some resources. Well, I said, I need to know first, what does the university do? The university provides free counseling. It may not be you can attend the entire school year. There might be a cap on how many sessions, but that means I can go to campus, and if I need help, I don't even have to leave campus to get it. Find out for those who are in post-secondary school, do their schools offer something like that? There are resources a lot of the times that exist that people may not be aware of, but we have to be intentional to do a bit of homework to try to find that information. There's still, mental health services are still terribly underserved, but there are resources out there that many may not know about.
That's good. And BetterHelp, just so when we're talking about how I know how I personally dealt with it with someone that was considering suicide, I actually offered that as a resource, and they looked into it. I sat down with them and looked into it, and formally went through the process with them to get booked. So I didn't just leave them to deal with it by themselves. I personally went through the process to make sure that I walked them through the step, and then what discounts were available. And they did offer some significant discounts, especially if you're a student somewhere. They offer certain discounts if you are in certain categories with the BetterHelp. And again, they're not one of our episode sponsors or anything, but they should be, huh? Everybody let BetterHelp know that the Kim Jacobsinc
too
is out here promoting BetterHelp, because I do believe that it is a great resource for people in the United States and in Canada. And so I'm honored to be able to put this out there. And that resource
about accessing these services is a lot of private therapists will work on what's called a sliding scale, so that they're matching their rate to income, or might have in their fee structure, they may have a certain amount of clients that they take pro bono. So
Yes.
it's also important to maybe even seek that out to find out what those options are. I think the hard part is we don't necessarily think of things till we're in crisis, and in crisis it's hard to access resources because you're so overwhelmed with the current crisis. But in a moment when you're not in crisis, it may be helpful to learn some of these options so that you have them to draw on in moments that are more stressful.
That's right. Great advice. And yes, as Mackenzie, I see your comment. You said it's like $200 a month, and that's still all expensive. By the time I helped the person that was doing this and they received a bunch of additional emails, it came down to almost like 40 something bucks. So it just depends upon you going through the process. And again, I'm not with their company or anything, and I can't advise, but I know that it ended up being very reasonably priced for the person I was working with. All right. So let's go back to some of your points. Right after this, let's take a commercial break. Mackenzie backstage, who's helping me. We're gonna take a commercial break. Come back to Natasha Halliday, our mental health expert. We'll be right back. All right, we are back and we're talking with some of our Freestyle Friday experts today. Marsha V. Watson, who's helping us with goal setting, time management, and just being able to be able to set those goals properly. And when we do that, hopefully we can have a better bandwidth to deal with some of the things that we're dealing with in life. We have our mental health expert, Natasha Halliday, and she's in the middle of sharing some very helpful tips with us. So go ahead, Natasha.
Yeah, so I was looking at some of the myths tied to suicide. And one of the myths is that it's always about mental illness. And so one of the things that I try to help people understand about suicide is our brains are wired to problem solve. And when we are facing stress, when we're facing emotional, mental pain, sometimes when the brain's like, I can't think of a way out, the thought of life being over is the way out. And so some of it is the desire to be separate from the amount of pain that someone is experiencing. I often, when I do crisis assessments, I used to often ask clients, if I could take your emotional pain away, would you want to die? And almost all the time, the answer was no. So in the sourcing out, how can I be free from all this pain and stress that I'm experiencing? Sometimes the idea, well, if I wasn't alive, I wouldn't be in pain, comes to mind. And I stress that because I want people to have a little bit more empathy. Sometimes there's a lot of judgment. Oh, suicide is selfish, this, that, and the other. If you've never been in a point where you have it cross your mind, you don't know what kind of pain leads to that thought process. It's not for us to judge.
That's correct. I'm glad you're saying that. But it's so hard for people not to judge because it's just a normal state of mind. It's like, who would do that? All of these comments and thoughts.
We judge and fear what we don't know. But that's why dialogue is so important. So we can gain understanding. And that's again why I say, don't negate the power of your presence. By being present and not judging, you don't know how that might be what extends them a few more days. That gives somebody a bit of life, right?
That's right. That's good. Okay. You all in the studio audience, I would love to hear your thoughts on this as well. So make sure you chime in if you have questions for Natasha Halliday. Put them in there and we'll get them answered hopefully throughout this broadcast. Okay, go on with some more of your points, Natasha.
So another myth is that people are not willing to seek help. People who are considering suicide and trying to end their life are not willing to seek help. And there may be people who are in treatment and still having that as part of their thought process. Some people have what's called suicidal ideation, where it's considered passive. They have thoughts of it, but they're not looking at ways they would actually end their life. They don't really desire to. And then it gets to the more extreme where people are actually looking at ways of ending their life. But in any of that, it doesn't mean that somebody's not willing to seek help.
So that's a myth that people are not willing to seek help. are
Yeah.
not willing to seek help. Okay, that's a myth. Okay, there's an echo. That's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I wanted to start with a little bit of the myths, and I did like address the idea of understanding that, it's important to recognize that, like I said, it's really probably evidence of really significant emotional pain, right? That's why it's often correlated with some mental illness like depression, anxiety, maybe something like a psychosis, but it's not only about mental illness that somebody comes to a point where that might be something that they consider. And so what's really important when we look at prevention, this is why stigma is such an awful thing. Stigma wants us to tuck, when they want us to sweep things under the rug. We need to be very open about the fact that, look at the numbers that you gave, look at the numbers that I gave. Suicide is a very real thing. And more people than are probably willing to say have at least had a thought, whether they would have even entertained it, but have probably at least had a thought. But because we exist in a world where we don't want to say these things, then it makes it more taboo when we do. I've had thoughts, never wanted to act on them, but I've had random thoughts in great moments of distress. If I'm not willing to say that, then I might put myself in a category outside of that makes people think, well, whatever they think. But I'm like, let's be honest, many people have had these types of thoughts. And then there's people who have them who might do something to either harm themselves and without necessarily desiring to die, or they're actually trying to end their life.
Okay.
Right? But I think it's really important that we look at, this is part of the impact of stigma, is people don't want to talk about it. And again, like I said, people are fearful of what they don't know. So one of the things that I also wanted to highlight, and I gave you that website, livingworks.net. LivingWorks has a training they provide called Safe Talk. And Safe Talk is provided to individuals and organizations, faith-based communities, first responders. And what they do is they teach people how to have dialogue about suicide. So that they know, just like I said, maybe you start with inviting a dialogue about, I've observed this. Or, even if it's somebody you see crying on a park bench, and that might be something that you think may be necessary to ask, how do you approach somebody you don't know and move into that type of dialogue, right? So livingworks.net provides a training called Safe Talk that can be done so that people can, it really helps remove the fear, because it teaches you some of the language and ways to approach the conversation.
Okay.
So for anybody who has an organization where they want to, look at that as an individual, if they're a faith-based leader, if they are a first responder, get on that website, look at how to get access to that training. That is also across Canada and the US. What's really great, I teach in a program called Child and Youth Care at a local college here in Toronto. And it's part of, before they graduate, they have to have that training in my program.
Good.
And my knowledge, in Toronto, the biggest transit system, they are all taught this program because of people trying to end their life in front of trains and stuff like that. So they're really trying to be cognizant of where the people who obviously are not working in jobs where they would think this would be necessarily dialogue, but we don't get to decide where somebody might be distressed and where somebody might experience this. And so empowering people to have language so that they don't feel fearful is really important.
Okay. I'm learning so much from what you're sharing today. And so I know everyone in the studio audience, and Marsha too, I'm sure, we're just soaking in this information. Any other tips you have? Because this is really helpful today.
So I wanted to touch a little bit on some of the things that warn you that somebody might be having these types of thoughts or contemplating this. Marsha touched on, even just maybe a change in disposition. And it's not that we want to think this for every change in disposition, but sometimes we know people in our lives really well. And so we can kind of observe some of the shifts, right? If somebody's talking about it and it's not maybe something they've ever talked about before, and they start to raise discussions about suicide, asking questions, what people think about it, maybe things like that. If they're looking at, ways people die by suicide, or ways maybe people are harmed or what have you, right? Giving away their belongings, right? Things that indicate that they don't see they're not planning for a future.
Right.
Right. One of the things that I look at when I'm doing a crisis assessment is some element of, is there future forecasting? You know, are you thinking about what you want to do a year from now? Are you planning a vacation? If you can't really talk about what you think is going to happen in life past a month from now, that would give me a bit of pause as somebody doing an assessment. Is this person hopeless? Have they just kind of lost all hope that life can change, things can get better? Are they engaging in self-destructive behavior? So these are some of the things that we look for.
Wait a minute,
If there's
what you're saying here too, because you're saying planning beyond a month from now. Talk about that one more minute, because I want you to just.
And so, like, not necessarily a month. I use that as a marker, but just the idea of, if somehow you find through dialogue through that with a person that there seems to be a point where they're not talking beyond that point, that might be a cause of concern, right? Because some people, if they're thinking about it, they plan for a specific date. And so looking at things like this, are they engaging in self-destructive behavior? Right? Almost thinking about the idea of, it doesn't matter what happens to me. Right? Are they experiencing, a sense of calm that almost doesn't make sense? And that one's a bit harder to work with. A lot of these I've gotten from helpguide.org, just to give me some guidelines. But just really stressing.
Let me interrupt for 1 minute. What is the self-destructive behavior? Any examples of that? Because when we say self-destructive behavior, are you saying like cutting, or what are some examples?
It could be self-injurious behavior, but it could also be maybe excessive substance use.
Okay. That's good.
Things that are indicating, I'm not really concerned with what happens to me.
Okay.
Right? Like, for anybody, and this is almost a silly example, but for anybody who's starting a diet on a Monday, we know on Saturday and Sunday we eat the most, right? Because we're restricting come Monday. So if I know that by a certain date I don't plan on being alive, does it really matter what happens to me along the way?
Okay. Interesting. Okay. These are in the studio audience, you guys. If you I'm popping all of these over there for you so you can have them later for your notes. And if you watch a replay or share it with your tribe, as Marsha said, make sure you share this with everyone. But also put your comments, and we're going to pop them up in a few minutes as well. Okay. Any other thoughts?
So the last thing I would add to that is self-loathing, like somebody who really hates himself. Obviously it's always an indicator of thoughts of suicide, but it could potentially be, one of the things that becomes part of the puzzle that shows you that this might be something that they're thinking about.
Okay. Wow. I mean, you've shared quite a bit of information here. So if we see these signs and these symptoms in people, then you're advising us to immediately go into action and offer them the 988, the counseling, help them to the best of our ability so that they don't just take this action if possible.
And one of the things I think that, again, because people sometimes are scared about the dialogue, is if I now say to you, have you ever thought about suicide? You may not be ready to talk about it, but I've planted a seed that lets you know that I'm willing to have a conversation with you about it. So maybe a few days later, the person might be ready to say, okay, Natasha, you know what? I have had some thoughts. Can we talk about it?
Okay.
And then you have that opportunity to have that conversation.
Okay. So because you're opening up the window of communication or the opportunity to speak about it, whether they speak about it right that minute or not, they know that they're on your radar, basically.
Right.
Okay. Marsha, any thoughts? And did you want to chime in? I know you've been very quiet because you're doing the time management over there, but anything based on
I do have some things that I want to add to that. I feel like when it comes to business owners, because I've always said that when you start a business, it's not just registering it.
Right.
It's also the customer service aspect. And then when Natasha mentioned Living Works, I think that it's something that all business owners, especially if you have the intention of hiring, should actually look at taking the Living Works. Was it livingworks.net you said, Natasha?
Yeah,
Livingworks.net is the website, and the training's called Safe Talk.
Safe Talk. I think it's very important to do the Safe Talk course because I'm just going to share my story. There was a time where I was going to close my business, like this year. I was going to close my business. I didn't have capacity for anything. And I started to get rid of all of my clients, except for maybe a few. And one of the clients that I had, she was the only one that would check on me every so often. Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? Not to say that everybody else should have done that, but it taught me also as a business owner and as a coach that it's important to be aware of what your staff, your employees, your coworker, whatever you want to call it, to pay attention to what they're suffering. Like you're not responsible, but you have a responsibility to share, the 988 and EAP or whatever it is in Canada. And it's not just saying, okay, I'm going to pray for you and run along. Like Natasha said, it's your presence as well, checking in on them, because you recognize that there's something amiss, like there's something different about them. Let me make sure that they're not a part of that statistic of what is unaliving their self, or whatever. What was the terminology you said?
Dying by suicide.
My apologies. Right. Yes, dying by suicide. It's very important to be aware of these things as a business owner, and to corporate HR, to create a very safe and supportive workplace, to have the work-life balance. Because they will tell you, we have work-life balance over here, but stay at work until 9 p.m. anyway. And it's unwritten rule that if you don't stay at work until 9 p.m. from 9 until 9, that you're not a team player.
We're going to eliminate 2 positions and the rest of you pick up the slack, but we want to promote workplace balance.
Right.
Yeah.
This plays a role in it as well, because when people have their time is consumed by, I need to make sure that I do well. I need to do well at work. It affects their psyche. It affects them holistically. So it's important to create a supportive and healthy work environment, whether you are virtual or in person, whether you're hiring a staff. Make sure that you educate yourself on the customer service aspect and the mental health aspect as well.
That's really good advice, especially because
I speak on burnout in workplaces. So like Marsha's like lighting up. I'm like, girl, you speaking my language now.
Because burnout is real, especially as entrepreneurs. People seem to think that we show up and we're like glim and glam, and here we are. We suffer.
You don't know
too.
when you're 11 o'clock in front of your computer going, why did I choose to work for myself?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. We suffer too, and we don't show the highlight. We only show the highlight reel. We don't show the parts where, money is funny, where, oh my gosh, I've just spent 12 hours working on this document and it's lost. You know what I mean?
Right. It's like, where did it go?
Right.
It's like,
so it's very important to check on your friends, check on your coworkers. And I speak to corporate environments as well. Create a safe and supportive environment, because you don't want to just hear your coworker that was sitting right beside you is suffering and you just silently and you just totally ignored them. Pay attention to your surroundings.
And if I can piggyback on something you said, Marsha, about creating the healthy workplaces, don't do the tick box stuff. EAP exists, which is great, but sometimes workplaces try to do the check box and it's not really actually hitting the humans that work for them.
Right.
We have to remember we are real people. We are not androids. We are not robots. We are real people with feelings. How are you meeting them where they're at to create the safe workplace, safe work environment?
That's important. And I see a lot of comments that's coming in. Ultimately, we're going to take a commercial break and then come back to all of your comments. But I do want people to know how they can stay connected with you, Natasha. So go ahead and let people know how they can do that as well.
So on social media, I can be reached at Natasha A. Halliday. So NATASHAAHALLIDAY. And my website is natashahalliday.com.
Okay. So I want you all to make sure you stay connected with this mental health expert that's here today on Freestyle Friday, and also with our business coach, executive, goal setting, time management expert, Marsha, as well. And we've been sharing how you can stay connected with her, but just say it one more time, Marsha, as well.
I can be found on Instagram at Marsha V. Watson, and my web address is divineexecutive.ca.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. So, and you know what? It's interesting. Like just now, I just put you back in this template type of thing, but you know, you're used to what you're used to, right? So you were on the other side. So I need to kind of put you back in your comfort zone and put you over there. And believe it or not, it's small things that can just trigger us to say, hey, wait, why did she just even switch us on the side in the middle of the show? And that's a silly, simple example, but we don't know what triggers a person to be able to feel like everything's thrown off in their lives. If that, I'm just using that as an example. And one thing I'll tell you personally is the day before my son Gabriel, which I wear his pin every day, a lot of you know that, but the day before he transitioned from this earth, we had a Bible study, and the Bible study topic was suicide.
Wow.
That Wednesday night at Bible study, I stood up and I stood up and I talked to the whole congregation and said, listen, if anybody tells you that I died by suicide, y'all do an investigation. It is not true. It's not true. It's just not, it's not the case. And I said it with great confidence because it's still the truth today that I'm not going to commit suicide in that regard. But you know, you never say never. The reason I say that is because that next day at the same time, that very next day at the exact same time, when I was there in that hospital room holding my son's hand, okay, I knew that moment why people would take their lives.
Mm-hmm.
That changed. When I say changes, everything about how I view people that will consider things to be hopeless, situations beyond their control, that they have no control of, and you know that the outcome can be different because of your faith, because of what I know I believe, and because of what I know I've witnessed along my lifetime. I've prayed for people and I've seen them be shot 12 times point blank, and then they come walking back down to church with a brace, but they coming back down, and God worked a miracle for them. So whenever you know that the outcome can be something based on what you believe and it does not happen, and you know that you could be it's like you can give up hope in a situation like that. All hope can be gone because you cannot change the outcome of the destiny of what's going down. You can't, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And the Bible even talks about hope deferred, right? What is it? Hope deferred makes the heart sick. Like, it's, God knows we have moments where we might not have hope. That's why I really want people to think about, if you don't understand it, doesn't mean you have the right to judge it.
Right.
That's the point. So whoever committed suicide, we don't know how hopeless they were, what sin they were, what the circumstances were. We're not God. We're not in control of what they decided that was the outcome of their destiny. We pray that that's never the case for a person, but we do not get to judge them and say that they did the wrong, you condemn to hell or whatever. I don't know what people think, but I know what I think. And what I think is, we don't know what circumstance led to what they ended up doing. So we want to pray for their families. We want to pray for everything that's surrounding whatever made that be the case. But my perspective changed for everybody, and it gives me different level of empathy regarding people pertaining to suicide. I just want y'all to know that. We're going to take a quick commercial. I can't talk. Sorry. We're going to take a quick commercial break. And right after this commercial break, we're going to come back and get some of our audio studio audience comments, and then we're going to close out. Okay? We'll be right back right after this break.
Why learn about health when you can experience it? Experience it in beautiful Florida in February 2024. Join us for 3 days of integrative and intensive health and healing education and empowerment with the expertise of the following Healthopedia author, speaker, and facilitators. The world-renowned homeopath and acupuncture physician, Dr. James Marinakis, 4-decade health coach and holistic nutritionist, Dr. Joe D. Bear, and others such as Kimberly Meredith, Dame Doria Cordova, Rex Sykes, Dr. Gary Sanchez, Jamie Kerr, Serena Brown-Travis, and more. Experience daily morning walking and yoga, interactive participation, panel discussions, and more for your own epiphany of health. Get your tickets now.
All right, everyone, we are back. And we are talking again about suicide prevention. And we've been talking with our experts, Natasha Halliday and Marsha V. Watson, and hearing also from you all. I just want to let you know today's episode is sponsored by Attorney Charles Everidge, dealing with any kind of workers' compensation, wrongful death of a loved one, or disability claim. Contact them at 704-457-5000. And the conference that you just saw, you can reach out to drjod.com, drjod.com/healthopedia-Florida event. And you can reach her at 800-820-0584, 800-820-0584. And the coffee commercial, which everyone loves, is vproducts.store, vproducts.store. Okay, I just wanted to take a moment and acknowledge our episode sponsors. And because we're talking about a topic that we know that is very intense here, we're not medical experts, we're not any type of physicians or anything to give you what type of specific diagnosis regarding suicide. The views expressed are simply our personal views as individuals. They're not reflective of that of the Gabe's Heart Foundation, CTR Media Network, or Believe in Your Dreams, or the Kim Jacobs Show necessarily. And the final thing I'll tell you about our episode sponsor is, if you're dealing with end of life things, keep in mind that all of us should learn about getinsured.solutions. There's a way for you to meet with this individual. Her name is Samantha Benson, and she'll be able to share more information on how to deal with final life expenses as well. 704-499-3616. Can you pop a few of the studio audience comments in for us? Let's see who chimed in right quick. And we're going to be closing out with a final thought from each of you all. Okay. Pop in some of the comments. One of y'all, please read the comments if you don't mind. Okay, let me go to some of these comments. Okay.
Darren Swan said, "You're right, balance, doctor. We shouldn't judge those who make drastic decisions when they're not stable mentally."
Thank you for your comment, Dayron, and thank you all for your support. Let's see.
And he also said, "Ultimately, God knows best, even when we feel hopeless."
Amen.
Yeah.
Ms. Kim Blingbar and more. Yes, ma'am. Having a traumatic experience can take you there. I've experienced what you speak of, Kim.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. Any more comments? Let's keep them coming.
So Sharon D. Brown said, life experiences can definitely change one's perspective.
Yes, it does. It always does. It shapes how we think. You can read one too, if you will, Marsha.
Divine Executive, so needed in today's workplace with so many people functioning in trauma, from Darren Swan.
Okay.
And yes, this is true about triggers, Sharon D. Brown. Justine Johnson Hillard, great show today. Happy holidays, ladies. And praying hands from Surrey. Sharon D. Brown says, this why self-care is essential for everyone. Self-inquiry, what you need in the moment, is crucial.
She's a self-care entrepreneur, and she teaches on her platform about self-care tips that are really life-changing. And she is also one of our Freestyle Friday experts. So you can see her here as well from time to time. Okay, go ahead.
Darren Swan, crisis assessment. Yes, prevention is the best intervention.
Yes, it is. Okay. It's lots of comments coming in.
Darren D. Brown, so true. What is being said about employers' illusion about work-life balance?
All right. All right.
And Justine Johnson Hillard, great show today. Happy holidays, ladies.
Okay, let me go up to one my mom said. Where's my mom? Don't leave that one out, Mackenzie, back there. Find my mama's comment, please. But while you're finding it, let's go to a closing comment from you, Marsha, and then we'll go to a closing comment from you, Natasha.
Honestly, I will just say to people watching, don't follow everything on social media, because people really only show you the highlight reel. It's okay to need help. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to reach out for help. It's okay to cry. Please reach out to someone if you're feeling any form of distress, and don't suffer alone. Call one of us. Even if you need any help, reach out to someone. It's okay.
Excellent advice. Okay. And before you make your comment, which we're getting ready to close out, I saw Shayna Gordine, and I know my mom made a comment. She said she's here watching. Anytime my mom types a paragraph, I want to find that, please. I see Dr. Tina J. Ramsey, who's over CTR Media Network, where we stream in 100 countries, 350 million households. Thank you for being here, Dr. Tina J. Ramsey. She has a Power of Podcasting book that is a game changer for you. And Shayna Gordine, and she said, good morning, everyone. Glad you are here, Shayna. So glad to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. And I used to do a bunch of balance makeovers and stuff, so I encountered this beautiful family, and I'm excited. I used to do like some whole super nanny thing, but this is a beautiful family here that's coming on, and I'm glad to have you. Now, my mom is on too, and she said, great show, and she's glad that she was able to tune in. Victoria Finch tuned in as well, and she said, hello, everyone. All right. Mom, thank you for being here in the virtual studio audience as well. I greatly appreciate your support always. All right. Let's go with your closing comment, Natasha, and we're going to close out today's episode.
So just a little bit more about, I'm going to close off with, approaching, having a dialogue. Try not to act shocked if somebody tells you they're having these thoughts, because that, I think, reinforces the stigma pieces and makes it seem like it's something scary. And, offer hope. And part of what I'm going to say in terms of offer hope, I'm going to connect it to what Marsha said at the beginning about when you have a lot in front of you and breaking it into smaller pieces and doing what you can. So when you're offering hope, some people are like, well, how's everything going to get better? Let's start with one thing. If the person hasn't showered for 4 days, is showering going to make your day better? If they, haven't had time in person with somebody, can I meet with you in person? Can we have a coffee together? Something. Offer hope and break even that down into small pieces and say, let's just add a drop of hope, and then we have something to build on. So that's what I'm going to remind people, is just offer some hope. Don't act shocked. And again, do not devalue the power of your presence.
Do not devalue the power of your presence, whether you're an expert or not. You are making a difference in that person's life in that moment, and it could be changing the trajectory and the outcome of their destiny. My mom said, good morning, and I'm watching and enjoying this great show. And then this is the final comment I'll put up, Mackenzie, and it's just praying hands from Siri E. All right. So thank you all so much for tuning into today's episode of the Kim Jacobs Show. Thank you for being here, Marsha. You shared some invaluable tips. Thank you, Natasha, for your mental health tips. And I pray this holiday season to everyone that we get the opportunity to just enjoy one another and not be someone that's dying by death by suicide in 1 in every 11 minutes. We do not want to be the 12.3 million that seriously thought about it, or the 3.5 million, according to the CDC, that made a plan about it, or the 1.7 million that attempted suicide, that actually attempted to do it. And most people that are doing this is through a firearm. We do not want to be in that category. If you're a person that's contemplating doing something that you know is harmful to yourself, talk to someone. Just get on anonymously and have a conversation. Don't do it. Don't do it because you're so needed. Okay. Livingworks.net and National Suicide in the United States and Canada, 988. Okay. All right. Reach out one more time. Reach out to Natasha Halliday. And the way that you do that, one more time, Natasha.
On social media, Natasha A. Halliday, and my website's natashahalliday.com.
And Marsha, one more time, please.
Instagram, Marsha V. Watson, and my website is divineexecutive.ca.
All right, everyone, show your ongoing support because this is a ministry, in my opinion. The Kim Jacobs Show definitely comes on Monday through Friday at 11 o'clock a.m. You can do any way of supporting the show and the broadcast. But I thank all of those that have been pouring in. Carrie Ann, I want to just thank you as well. I know I saw just recently a contribution from you. So thank you so much. Thank you, Daron Swan, as well. I saw your contribution. And I want to acknowledge you all during the broadcast. All right, take care. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of The Kim Jacobs Show and for being in the virtual studio audience. Your presence truly does make a difference, and I look forward to you bringing your friends and family to join you in the virtual studio audience Monday through Friday at 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time.